of the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23rd, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. All votes during this meeting will need to be conducted by roll call. No in-person attendance will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings as provided for in the order. Public participation will be permitted by allowing members of the public to join this meeting via Zoom or via the telephone, and comments can also be sent in by email at publiccomment@yarmouth.ma.us. I will now take a roll call vote to enter into a meeting quorum. And Selectman Stone.
Aye.
Selectman Horgan. Selectman Tolley.
Aye.
And Selectman Post.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, we are in, our meeting will begin, and let's start with joining us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
To the flag,
States,
United States of America,
to the republic,
and to the republic for which it stands,
and
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
okay. First item on the agenda is public comments. Kyle, do we have anybody seeking recognition for public comments?
First up is Mr. Joe Glenn.
Mr. Glenn.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Happy Feast of St. Florian and International Firefighters Day. Protector of floods and fire, St. Florian is, and I'd like to join with you in honoring our firefighters, past, present, and future, our EMTs and our paramedics, and hope that they're safe. And Yarmouth, as you know, is one of the best fire departments on the Cape, and I would argue anywhere. So I'd like to have you recognize them at some point. But I also, in the service-related field, there was a couple issues that came up on the Warrant articles. One was in regards to the veterans home and a CPC amount of $20,000. I think some people might be confused about that because the home is in, that many of us know is in Dennis, but it's sponsored by the Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach Center. And there's nothing to say that either a Yarmouth resident or a past Yarmouth resident veteran could be in there. And if we did anything in the future in the town of Yarmouth, either sponsored by the town or the housing authority, they would help us try to do the same thing. So I'm all in support of that amount. I know there was a change in the amount, but I'm in support of it. I think some people didn't realize, and I know, and I understand that sometimes people are concerned when there's money going from our CPC fund to other towns. So I identify with that, but in this case, I think it's money well spent, and it's a very small amount. The other one was the Gold Star tax incentive. I think that any person that would seek to get that tax incentive would be well worthy in getting it. Gold Star, as you know, is someone who died as a result of their active military service. So I'm wondering if our veterans agent could assist in presenting those, especially the ones that weren't voted for by the endorsed by the finance committee, or who would be presenting that article, but I think, we do give money for our veterans agent, and I think that those are the type of things that they should be weighing in on. But in regards to money going out of town, I think that the public in the town meeting will have a question about the Cape Playhouse facade. And, I'm all for, if there's a reciprocal type of money that's going back and forth, for different towns and different type of cultural things. But I think it's best if the towns represent that from their own CPC money. So I'm a little confused about that. And I don't need to know it now, but I think for town meeting, we should be able to answer those questions. But other than that, I have nothing. Have a great evening, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glenn. Anybody else seeking recognition?
Yeah, Ms. Vita Morris.
Ms. Vita?
Hello.
We can hear you.
I want to thank you for the vote that you took last week, the votes actually, on the petitioned articles. Needless to say, I'm quite pleased with that. I do have a question. Mr. Rittenhour said that he polled or he met with the department heads on, I think it was one of the solar panel articles, and he was surprised by their reaction or something like that. Could you please explain to me? I must have missed something, because I'm not sure exactly what it was that surprised you.
Let me just take a minute here. Bob, is there something, can you respond to that real quick? Was there something that you were surprised at?
Yes,
I'm not, okay, go ahead.
I had indicated, and thank you very much for your question and for appearing, at the meeting this evening. And what I indicated that I was surprised at is that generally speaking, the department heads had not been involved in reviewing or drafting the bylaw prior to its submission, and they did not have a detailed knowledge of it. Some folks were a little surprised to see that, and so that's what I was surprised at.
Oh, I see. I mean, well, it's something that I actually raised at one point. I think I questioned whether some of the departments had been involved in with the people who were presenting the petitioned articles, because they might have been helpful. And I just well, actually, what I questioned was whether they in any way would be helpful to those people in putting together the articles, which are very flawed. I mean, honestly, for us to jump in with full force, even with the solar panels, even, when there are so many questions, where we're just at the beginning of that whole science or what have you, and for us to try and be in the very forefront, and then to present these articles when they're obviously there are very serious financial implications directly to the taxpayers and via the town finances, I think, but then indirectly that still is the taxpayers that would have to be funding these kinds of requirements that are in those petitioned articles. So as I said, I'm very happy that the way the board voted, and I think we need to try and pull the people back a little bit, and in the future, if at all possible, if there's anything you can do to require that when they come in with these petitioned articles, they must present some kind of financial implications that come with them, because a lot of that has very serious implications. So I think if there's some way of, requiring them to do that, it would be very helpful. And just the last thing, Mr. Horgan, I have a little trouble hearing. Everybody else I can hear perfectly well, but if you could speak up, I would appreciate it.
I'll try.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I don't see anybody else seeking recognition. Oh, Tom Nicanello, Mr. Nicanello. Please.
Yeah, evening, Board of Selectmen, Mr. Chairman, Tom Nicanello from the very historic village of Bass River. And may I say it was once considered to be the Cape Cod Canal, and thank God that didn't happen. But anyways, so thank you all very much for lining yourself up for a very busy agenda tonight. I'd just like to remind everybody that, as you guys know, but I'm not sure the people out there in the audience, on May 22nd, we'll be having the town meeting, as you folks have been working extremely hard to prepare for. And also May 18th, we have our election. And thanks, Mr. Horrigan, for stepping up to the plate and putting yourself in the mix again, along with the three other gentlemen out there. There's Kurt Sears, there's Peter Q. Smith, and I think Joe Glynn is running. So we want to thank those gentlemen for stepping up to the plate and having some love and devotion for their community. With that, Mr. Chairman, also I'd just like to reflect the makeup of the board the last year with our government channel, Channel 18. As we all know, in the past, we had some real bad content on there, and it really wasn't exciting to watch. And due to everyone's efforts there and behind the scenes, our government channel is actually where we like it to be now. And with the technology, with the Zoom and everything else, I think our government channel will be able to grow once our boards and committees are allowed to come back together and be viewed on Channel 18. I think that is a very positive thing. And as you know, that's where it all starts, by people making a commitment. So we like to thank those people and encourage everyone to come out and vote. That is our right. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to leave you with a little poem here. Here's wishing you a Mother's Day that's filled with every pleasure, and a future that's as happy as the memories you treasure. So good night. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Tom. Seeing there are no other people seeking recognition for public comments, we're going to go on. Oh, I do believe we had a written comment.
Yes,
Getting
Mr.
flagged.
Chairman, we did have
And,
one.
Kyle, is there a written comment?
Yeah, one piece.
Okay,
written
go right ahead.
correspondence, from Mr. Ciavara. So this was from Robert Ciavara, 23 New Hampshire Ave, dated May 4th, 2021. Dear Board of Selectmen and residents of Yarmouth, tonight there will be discussions regarding spending CPA funds at annual town meeting. The two articles I'm addressing are the ones where funds are being spent in Dennis on housing and historic projects. On merit, they certainly look to be worthy projects, except they are not located in Yarmouth. What we have missed is it's simply not our money to spend charitably wise, because it doesn't necessarily help any Yarmouth residents, nor would it help us with any of our own blighted properties or housing needs. We should be asking the town meeting body for approval to spend their money and separating those two, historic and housing requests, so that we can accomplish that. Remember, Dennis is a wealthier income per capita town. It has the same percentage of affordable housing units. It is a wealthier town by average home values. It has a tax rate of nearly half ours, and their bond rating is better and has been better traditionally since 2007, 2008. On the average home, they're paying nearly $2,000 less in taxes per year. That's a lot of money to most residents in Yarmouth. They're better equipped to do these projects, but choose not to. I don't remember any funds being contributed for our housing projects. Let's keep Yarmouth money in Yarmouth. Hopefully the board will consider the information provided above. Best regards, Robert Ciavara.
Thank you. That's the only written comment, correct, Kyle?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a COVID-19 update for the town of Yarmouth. I believe we have the Health Director, Bruce Murphy. We also have Hillary Bosky, the Chairman of the Board of Health. Could we bring those two individuals into our meeting? That's great.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman
evening.
and board members. Bruce Murphy, Director of Health, with a COVID update. Starting off with our daily case chart. We can see the first wave in May, April, the big second wave, November, December, January, then our third wave that started in March, and now we see it drastically decreasing down to where we saw, if you can just move it up just a smidge, Kyle, that on April 27th, we went down to only 16 cases, which we didn't have 16 cases till last November 12th. So it's been 5 months, so we've got that low. It has gone up a little bit over the last few days, but just 2 or 3 cases here. So feel that we're on the decline, and we'll just have to follow this a little bit more. But at least we're on the good side of the number of cases. Overall cases from the beginning of the pandemic, 1,559, and now we're only following 24 active cases. As we saw in the past chart, in the third wave, we're up to following almost 100 daily cases. So now it's down to 24. So we're heading on the right direction. Okay. By age, we've looked at this the last a few weeks, and we've had, what the age is, the total that we've had since the beginning is the first column. The new wave, third wave cases we have right here, but I just added the declining third wave of what's been different since April 27th to May 3rd. So it's kind of interesting that our cases are declining, but where are we seeing the new cases coming from? It's kind of interesting. It's almost, it's hard to say statistically, but it's almost pretty even from age 0 to 10 positive cases up to age 69. So just a small sampling, but we are still getting it, and that's why we're targeting trying to get information out to all age groups. And yes, we do have 4 under the age of 10 that have picked it up, and I know the board has seen that when we've updated the board on our daily updates. But we did have one last week down to 8 months old. So we are seeing them in all ranges. The older people are mostly vaccinated, so we're not seeing the cases in age 70 and up now. So I just kind of thought this was a different way to look at it from the last week. Okay, thank you. Yarmouth still remains a red high-risk community, the only town on the Cape left. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, there was 7 Cape towns in the red. We are going down. We just missed going down to the yellow last week because we were carrying a lot of positive cases from the week before. But heading forward tomorrow and Thursday, we should see the town going down to the yellow category. Our positivity case right now is at 5. The county's at 3, 4, and the state's around 2. So we're moving in the right direction, and we just need to get more vaccine out into that age group. Thank you. Just kind of interesting, unfortunately we stick right out there on the Cape. But when we looked a couple of weeks ago, the whole Cape, the 7 towns were red, and pretty much all of southeast Mass was red. So the state is moving in the right directions, and I think that's why you did see Governor Baker issue some reopening orders last Thursday of not wearing mask in public if you were not if you're outdoors, if you were not close to anybody or close on social gathering. So I think you're going to see more openings by the governor over probably the next month. But we are moving in the right direction. Thank you. Precautions. I say this every week. We still need to do it. We just had another sleepover at the high school level. Had a sleepover which affected 5 students that came positive. Was outside our district, but it affected several athletes on teams that were required to they had to not play, And the kids that had to sit out, unfortunately, with his tryouts coming up. So something that we just still need to keep track on. Yes, we're moving out of the red high risk zone, but we still need to take our precautions as we go forward with vaccinations. Thank you. So as we move forward in vaccinations, we can see the one dose administered by county, Barnstable County, we're up to 64%. Last week, we were at 59%. So we are moving in the right direction to get the people on the Cape vaccinated. So that's a plus. With at least one vaccine, we're up to 64%. And the next chart will show that fully vaccinated residents in Barnstable County are now 47%. We had been at 41% last week. So again, we're moving in the right direction also on getting the vaccine out. How does that stand up for Yarmouth vaccinations? I just want to look at the bottom line on this one, that out of our total population of the 24,000, we have vaccinated 14,500, approximately 61% of our population with at least one dose. So again, we're moving in the right direction total. I want to go to the next slide. I break it down a little bit more on the next slide, just out of curiosity, where we've been over the last week. And we can see from working from the bottom down, we've done about 1,100 people have been vaccinated, at least with one dose since last week. So that's the good news. And then we can see it by age group, and that's 75 and older. We had 64 vaccinated, but again, we got most of that age group vaccinated, so they wouldn't expect a high number there. And either with the next group, 65 and older, because they've had the opportunity to get the vaccine over the last month. But the age group that we've been trying to get the vaccine out, we've been targeting, is that age group of 30 to 65. And we can see that we've had over 300, almost 400 in that age group just in the last week. And we're even getting down into the 20 to 30 age group of 154, and the age group of the teenagers. So that's good news over the last week, but we still need to get the message out there on the vaccinations. Thank you. Homebound, we're kind of finishing up on that. That's been going great. Working with the Council on Aging, we've been getting that out. If you want to go one more slide, Kyle. The vaccination team has been terrific. Fire department's been doing an outstanding job. Can't say enough for them. Pulling teams together of paramedics and EMS to go out. Last week they got back to Johnson & Johnson and went out, did some more. Some people had requested it. Some people wanted to go to the Moderna. So a juggling of sending out 4 or 5 teams. And when they go to the house, they're there at least probably 20 minutes because they have to wait 15 minutes after they give the vaccination, and they got paperwork. So as they spread out the teams across the town, it takes a while to get out there and do that. But they've been doing a terrific job, and Council on Aging has been calling people regularly when they're going to get vaccinated and staying in touch with everybody. And we just, you can go to the next slide. And people that are listening now can still call Council on Aging tonight, tomorrow morning, the latest. We just added 2 people yesterday to get homebound going out this Thursday. Should wrap up our number, which will probably be, I'm thinking, somewhere around 130-ish. So we're still doing a great job. That will take care of our homebound till we need to do the second round of Moderna. So that's been great. We've got the Council on Aging is making a great number of phone calls. So people don't hesitate to call in. Like I say, we're still getting phone calls here to the Health Department, and best to go directly to the Council on Aging. I have just a couple last slides. Vaccine clinics, I showed this one. Cape Cod Healthcare has been getting extra doses or more doses, and they're available for quick scheduling, self-schedule, get right on capecodhealth.org. You can probably get into a clinic this week. That's how vaccine is becoming available on the Cape. The next slide shows Cape Cod Healthcare is also at the Melody Tent this Wednesday, tomorrow. 3 to 7, get out a little at night so people working can get out there. You can call this number also, besides going to healthcare.org. You can call this number to get an appointment. They also look at being at the Melody Tent this weekend. So if you can't make it tomorrow, still call this number and they'll get you in a vaccine clinic coming up, because they want to do weekends to make it more available at a later time for more people to take advantage. My last slide is Harbor Health out of Hyannis and Barnstable is also offering clinics, and you can call this number here, and you can also get an appointment this week, and possibly even a walk-in call tomorrow or so forth. They've been working at their facility up in Independence Park, but they've also been working with the Barnstable Council on Aging. So vaccines becoming much more available to us in the Mid-Cape area, along with the county providing countywide, whether it's at the county fairgrounds. In Down Cape, they're looking at having a couple sites down there. So the vaccine is available, and we're getting that out. When these numbers come in for availability, I've been working with the Chamber of Commerce, so they've been able to send it out to their membership, the Restaurant Association, so they can get it out, and the Council on Aging sends it out to their information of 2,500 mailing. And then I've asked Kyle to put it up on our social media too, that has a large following. So we keep getting it out to the count, and I think we saw increase in our number of vaccine that we showed earlier. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Let me go around to the board members to see if they have any questions or comments. Let me start with Eric Tolley. Eric, do you have any comments or questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, Tracy Post, any comments, questions?
Thank you, Bruce. Again, very happy to see the trends. It's becoming extremely easy now to get the vaccine. One of the numbers that you showed though on your chart was the percentage dropped dramatically. Well, not dramatically, I guess. The percentage, even in the older age groups, from those fully vaccinated to those that only had one shot, is a little bit concerning. And I know in the younger age groups, I understand it because they only recently became available to them. But I heard on the news as well that there's some, I'm not sure why that is, but why would somebody go through the process of getting one and not a second? I'm not sure why that's happening.
No, we have heard that also, but then other people are coming in. I know we have our Board of Health Chairman here, Hillard, Bosky, if you'd like to say anything on that. I know we've discussed that, and you've seen that also at some of the clinics that you've provided vaccinations at.
Nationally, I think it's 8% of the people not returning for their second injection if they're on a regimen that requires 2 injections. It's that high. We don't have numbers here on the Cape. I can tell you when I'm vaccinating people, people often aren't coming back to the second shot. It takes an effort. People feel that they're protected sometimes just by the 1 injection. They do have some protection, but it certainly would be better if they get the whole regimen, 2 injections. And for all we know, we may need more than that. We may need boosters. But it takes an effort on individuals. And we're not in such a rural area where people have to take hours to get an injection. We have plenty of vaccine here. People can go to another site to get an injection if it's more convenient. It's funny how things change. We're now facing vaccine hesitancy. Nationally, looking at 35–40% of people have no intention of getting vaccinated. So that is a new problem in the country, and certainly right here in Yarmouth.
Well, I mean, I'd like.
Did you have any follow-up?
I'm sorry?
I was just asking if you had a follow-up.
No, I'm good. I can just say that right now, if you go on CVS.com, there's there's plenty of spaces available, slots available right here in South Yarmouth, and it's very easy. So hopefully we'll keep those percentages going up. Thank you.
Dan,
Yeah, I
Rodriguez.
mean,
Dan, do you?
I can tell you, on Monday, I was on a site where we could take in any walk-ins and we're just waiting with vaccine, ready to give people injections.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, just very pleased to see the work that's been done. You brought the numbers down significantly, and I'm just appreciative and thank you.
Mike, Selectman Stone?
I have a few questions. When you see, and it doesn't seem to be a common event, but infants 4 months to 8 months getting COVID, how dangerous is that? We don't really hear too much about that population because probably there's very few infections at that age level. But with a new infant, is this disease as dangerous as it would be, let's say, for a very elderly person? Or are children, even at that young age, more resistant and resilient against the COVID virus?
Chairman? Do you want to take that one?
Michael, I agree. We don't see it on the news. I'm not seeing massive amount of published papers on it. Also, I'm not looking for it. We certainly don't have that population here. But I'll speak for Bruce as well. We're not hearing about cases here of infants getting all that sick and getting hospitalized. Not aware of it.
Right. The children that we've had, and they have been infants, haven't come down with COVID symptoms as dire as some of the other ones. And they've been within, as it went through a whole family, with those children not going back to the hospital.
The next question, I guess, is for Dr. Vosky. There's a lot of inaccurate assumptions about some of these vaccines, particularly the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, which are really genetic triggering defenses to a virus with the messenger RNA. And there are people out there that think somehow it's going to affect their DNA, when in reality, it has nothing to do with the nucleus of the cell. The RNA, messenger RNA, is outside of the nucleus into the cytoplasm. So how do you dispel these myths, and how do you get people who are relying on really inaccurate information about the potential genetic effects of those two vaccines, and let them know that that's not going to happen because it has nothing to do with the inside of the nuclear membrane?
Because I don't think most of the population is spending as much time as you have in reading about the design of these vaccines, which are incredibly well designed, and it's really sophisticated medicine. And to educate the general population that way is pretty difficult. And I think we can only educate about safety, and making statements like it's not going to change their DNA sounds very simple, but you're right, that may help us.
I mean, I've heard people say that to me to my face. I'm not getting that thing. That'll change all your genetic makeup. And I'm like, no, it won't. But it's hard to explain why, unless they understand some cellular,
really not
cellular biology.
We're not seeing the kind of side effects that are really much more common with other vaccinations. Not at all. The most important to see is we'll see, well, how long does the protection last? And everyone has to remember, Most of us choose to get a flu shot every year. And that may be the case here, but people who are getting injections are getting antibodies. Majority of people are and have protection. And just as a reminder, yes, you may get infected, but you don't get sick. For these vaccines, people don't end up in the hospital and aren't dying. So they are very, effective.
The other question I have is for both of you, I guess you and Bruce. When you see the decrease in the number of cases from the last spike that we've had, do you think that's because we're distancing ourselves from events that cause spikes, such as April vacations or Christmas vacations or things like that? Or do you think it's due to the increased supply of vaccine? What do you think more is driving the decrease in the numbers?
I'd say it's a combination of things. I think it's all kind of coming together. People are outside more, now starting in the spring. They're not in the tight all together during the holidays. When at that particular time in the holidays, when we saw the second spike, people weren't vaccinated. People were just starting to get vaccinated, in January, towards the end of January. So, I mean, most people weren't vaccinated when we saw the big second spike come in. So I think you see more people vaccinated, you see more people outside, you see more people taking, hopefully, more precautions. So I think it's several things that are going together to keep us in the right direction. And I think people are staying away from the gatherings. There hasn't been a lot of gatherings. The governor's been pretty strict on the gathering limits. And, just now, as we start to go in the right direction, you see the governor reopening more events.
All right, I'll save a couple for next week.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for doing all the reading. It's great.
Yeah. Mike, are you working on your PhD in biology on your free time?
No, but believe it or not, I took a pre-med bio course when I was in college, and I'm very interested in cellular biology.
There you go. Comes in handy. Who would have thought, right? Well, all I want to do is just say thanks again for all of your work at the health department and with the Board of Health, and to thank also all the town employees and the departments that are working hard on this. We appreciate all the hard work. It's great tonight to see the list and see no new cases for people over 70. And we know we're headed in the right direction, as you said. Pretty soon we'll be seeing zeros across the board. And I know we're all looking forward to that. So thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is I believe, a liquor license hearing, Shea Hospitality, Bayberry, Bass River Golf Courses. I'm going to turn.
Mr. Chairman, that matter is going to be deferred because there was apparently a problem with the notices that went out on that matter. So I got an email today from Bob Lawton. I forget the date. Do you remember the date, Bob? That's going to go is it the 20?
It's next week, sir. It's May 11th to be that. And
so that's got to be
only
renoticed apparently, and I don't know the details, but it really doesn't matter. It's something that the notice wasn't adequate, and we have to correct that. So that will not go forward tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the capital budget hearing. Before we begin and bring up the capital budget committee, I just want to be clear. We're going to start with, I had a recommendation from the town administrator that we should start with a discussion on and presentation on the 5-year capital plan first, followed by the FY22 capital plan. Does that recommendation still hold, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right, so let's start off with our capital budget team. See if we can bring them into the meeting. Kyle.
So Kyle, that would be Sandy Fife, Judy Connors Tarver, got to get through my list, sorry. Murphy, Ed Santio, George Perkins. No, George is in the full finance, sorry. Gene Hinkle is Jeff, John Sawyer, And
You got Will and Lindsay as well.
got Liz, I'm keeping Robert, Vita. Yeah, I'm not, thank you. You're seeing it better than I am. Will and Lindsay, okay. Thank you.
Very good, everybody. And I'm assuming Sandy has a presentation that we'll be getting on the screen shortly, correct?
Yes, it's,
We'll work on
Kyle,
it.
you've got that, right?
Sandy, I'm just going to need you to unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
All right, okay, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so we do have a PowerPoint. The 5-year plan is within the PowerPoint. I'm not sure if you want to start with that, if you need to go to that page.
Well, that's what our administrators recommended. So if we can, I'd like to, I assume that was communicated. I apologize that it wasn't, but it would be helpful to start there if we can, the 5-year.
It was. All right, Kyle, so if you go through, I think it's, keep going, keep going, keep going. There.
Okay, thank you so much. So it is required that we present to you a 5-year capital plan, and also, according to charter, a 10-year capital plan. And basically, the 5-year capital plan is based on what the departments submit to us for their plan. One thing we found over the last few years is we're not getting anything from the school departments to include in this plan. So if you look at this, this is a synopsis broken down. We have presented the details to the board by department, but for other or Department of Natural Resources, it's approximately $6.8 million. Ambulance receipts, as you see in the warrant, is $989,000. And then we have golf and water that was requested. Roadways, and you'll see in 2022 that the levy no designated funding number is very, very high. And this is basically due to the fact that we have been deferring for the last 2 years due to COVID. Many of the items that were requested by the departments have been deferred, as you will see when we do our presentation tonight, that we have deferred to the fall town meeting, many of the items that were requested. So the committee would like to spend more time on the 5-year and the 10-year plan moving forward. As I said, this is basically what the departments have given to us. On the 10-year plan, what we basically do is we pull out the items that are over $1 million. So they are included in the 5-year plan, but on the 10-year plan, we pull out those larger items so the board can see what items, and that is in the next slide, what items are over $1 million that really need more discussion, more work as far as the committee is concerned, and more recommendations on how we would fund each one of these items. So they are included in the 5-year plan, as well as all the routine capital items. But these items are, as I said, over $1 million. And as of right now, we are working on a plan for the fall for the coastal infrastructure, as the board has asked us to do. How would we possibly fund $15 million in coastal infrastructure repairs? And we will be working on that over the summer. And hopefully in the fall, we'll be able to make some type of recommendations to the board. The items that are included in here, we have not discussed, although they are on the radar, and they do need more discussion on how they would be funding. Items not included in the 10-year plan or the 5-year plan is the Mattakey School replacement, or the Cape Cod Tech School, the DPW, which is currently moving forward. Also the roads, and some of the items from the water department are not in the 10-year plan, but they are in the 5-year plan. So, we're willing to enter any questions on the 5-year plan. As I said, we need to spend more time on this, as we ask that the departments over the next few months, we will be looking for more detail coming forward to us on the 5-year plan. Sometimes what we see is items sometimes appear on the capital plan and then they disappear. They're not even, if we don't fund them, they don't even appear in the next year. So that needs to be looked at more closely. So if you have any questions on that, we'd be glad to entertain those.
Well, what I'd like to do is, since this is advertised as a hearing, a public hearing, I'd like to at least see if there's anybody in the public that has any questions or comments for you.
Okay, great.
Do we have any hands? Do we have any hands raised at all? I do not see anybody.
We do look forward to working with the new town administrator and to get his ideas on the 5-year and the 10-year plan and how he would like to see these presented. We will be doing that over the next few months.
That's great. Let me just go around to the board and start off with Tracy Post. Tracy, do you have any comments or the questions for the committee?
Thank you all for your hard work on this. I know it's always an undertaking that you all are willing to do, and I'm very appreciative for that. Judy, your dog's adorable. I guess when you say sometimes these things appear and then disappear, I was surprised to see a few of them without having any background or knowledge. So we've talked a lot about dispatch and joint dispatch. And so seeing the 1.3 million for a dispatch center, I'm just wondering where that came from and what information behind the 1.3 million that you have.
Well, that probably came from last year's plan. As I said, these numbers come from either administration or the department heads. So either we have not had any discussion on the dispatch with either chief this year. So we need to vet that a little bit more. So that probably was in last year's 10-year and 5-year plan.
So this plan is not a plan of the capital budget committee? Is that what you're telling me? This is a plan of administration that?
And department heads, correct.
Oh, okay. So it's not really, okay.
Yeah, the departments give us a 5-year plan. We consolidate that into a total plan.
But you didn't have a discussion on the value of the placement or anything as far as prioritizing? The committee itself doesn't have a discussion on the 5-year?
Only when the departments do their presentation, they will highlight the current year, and we do have a discussion on the current year. As far as the future 4 years, no, I would say no, we do not have a discussion on the future years.
Okay. I have no other questions then. There's not much, we don't have any information really to discuss.
No,
As I said, we need to spend more time on the 5-year and the 10-year plan, basically more.
So we're really only looking at 2022 right now.
And the recommendations of your department heads for the other 4 years, yes.
Okay, well, then can somebody give me some information behind the 1.3? Is this something that we have to endorse? We're asked to endorse the capital plan, is that correct? I would just like to find out some information behind these numbers
I
coming
believe
up.
I'm sorry, Sandy, I'll let you answer that.
I would say yes. I'd leave that to the administration to answer that question on the charter recommendations, if you have to endorse it or not. We haven't had that question before.
Yeah, well, my understanding is we have to have the hearing and we have to have it within certain time parameters. So we're doing that more or less as a formality. Do we have to actually vote tonight or recommend tonight? I don't believe so. I think what we need to do is comply with the requirement of the hearings. Bob Lawton, do you want to chime in here at this point? Do I have it? Am I reading it right?
I think that's correct. You endorse the, well, you haven't yet. You, on the FY22, you've not made a recommendation on Article 10, which either tonight or next week you would need to. You have recommends from the floor. As far as the 5 and 10-year plan, my understanding of the charter, I'm looking quickly at, just requires you to have the hearing, and then the capital budget committee, as they said, would come back with the details once they ferret out whether there are any recommendations to the board on how to proceed with either plan. But I don't believe you have to adopt it, either the 5 or the 10-year.
Does that help?
Not really. I mean, I understand the process. I've been doing this a while, but to have a discussion about a 5-year plan with no details is really just going through the motions for no purpose. But I understand. So we'll look at this year, FY22, and we'll focus on that. Okay.
We have
Yeah.
given you the details, though, of the numbers that are presented on the PowerPoint.
For FY22.
And for 23 through 26, you have the details of those numbers.
So that's what I'm asking, though, the information behind who requested the 1.3, what that, what that is, where that is.
Yes, that's in the 5-year detailed plan that was presented in your packet.
I believe that came from the fire department's long-range plan. I did just bring Chief Simonian up to this in case he has an answer for that.
Yes, the 1.3 is under the fire department for 2023. As well as the 18 million under 2026 is from the fire department. So the detail is in the 5-year plan we did present.
So Chief Simonian's here. Would you like him to answer that question for you, Selectman Post?
Well, not if we're not going to have a discussion about the 5 years. If we're only going to talk about FY22, then I can stay focused on that. I just, it's the first time I've seen that as if the decision's been made already that that's what we're doing. And so if that's the case, I would like to know that. There's a couple other things on here I would like details on, but none of them are FY22. So.
Okay, well, let me go to Dan Horgan. Do you have any comments, Dan?
Thank you, Mr.
Questions?
Chairman.
Yep.
Sandy, I'm new to the board, but the one question I had was your comment regarding the schools. Has there been a policy in the past that the schools have incorporated their capital plan with ours? And
yes,
what's caused the departure from that practice, and why are they no longer including their information with yours?
The memo that goes out from the administration to the department heads in October asks for a 5-year plan. That school department receives the same memo as every other departments do. And since I've been on the board, we do not get a 5-year plan. We only get a current year plan of what they're requesting for that current year. I've worked in the town of Dennis, and it was the same there. They never gave us a 5-year plan. They only gave us a 1-year plan. And so even though it was requested. So I don't think anything's changed. I think they've, that's just been their practice.
From your perspective, is there a benefit to having the two side by side and presented? And
I think, yes, I think there's a benefit in an accurate 5-year plan. It gives a better tool for the selectmen as far as funding purposes are concerned. So I mean, it would be great to see what they're looking at over the next few years. And it's something we need to work with the school department on.
I guess my only suggestion would be to Bob Whitnow to maybe you could have a chat with the superintendent and find out either why they're not including it, or to invite them to begin including it so that our projections. It makes sense to me that you'd want, that's a very large department in the town, and it makes sense to me that we would want those numbers side by side with what the town's planning in order
I
to
think
taxes.
I agree. And I also think it's probably new to them that we're even requesting those items, because I think if you look back more than 5 years, we didn't even ask the school for their capital requests. We expected them to fund those within their own budget, but we have
Okay.
reached out to them, so it would be a good idea if they could provide that.
So maybe just a discussion is needed.
Right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Let me go else to the board. Eric, do you have any comments or questions on the
I don't-
5-year
I
plan?
just want to thank them for all their hard work. I don't have any questions at this time, but I may as the meeting goes on and we get into FY '22. Thank you.
Cool. And Mike Stone, Mike?
I don't have any questions at this
any
time,
Comments?
Mr.
Question?
Chairman, but I too would like to thank the board for all the hard work.
Yeah. That's great. And
Mark, can I just-
I see
I
Kurt
just wanna-
Sears has his hand up. Tracy, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that, to Dan's point, the last time, not this past go around, but the budget cycle previous, when we had some discussion about capital with the school, it was requested of them and they were hiring somebody to do a thorough, Dan was working with them to get somebody over there. It was very difficult, even when they do submit it. Sandy will probably tell you, and she probably recalls, that the background information that's given to us in order for us to be able to support and endorse those plans were very limited. So it's been a long-term problem for us trying to really get our arms around what the needs are. And I know there's a lot of criticism about the school buildings. And but this has been a problem going back to, I think it was 2 years ago when they asked for, I want to say it was about $1 million for the Emmy Small roof, but we had asked them to come up with a comprehensive plan, because at that time we didn't know what their plan was for the school, and to throw $1 million at a roof may not have been the best use of money. So at that point in time, again, this is going back about 2 years or so, they were going to hire somebody, and they were in the process of securing a consultant to actually look at the buildings and give us that plan. So that's already in process.
Thank you, Tracy. Kurt Sears, did you have an observation or something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, going back to the schools, and again, this is just my personal feeling. You know, I'm kind of at the point where I'd rather let the schools go deal with their own capital issues, because again, like Sandy said, it's the same way with Dennis. You ask them year after year after year for some long-range planning, so that it makes it easier. Like the 5-year plan that you're looking at, there's no absolutes there. It's just something to think about in the future. We may need to do it, we may not, like the fire station, the dispatch, whatever it is. It's not, yeah, we have to do it in that particular year. It's just a planning tool. But like this year, we approved a couple of items for the schools, and then they decided to go fund them themselves. It's this weird game with them every year, trying to figure out what they need and how we can help them. And in the same vein as on the schools that are regional, is working with the Dennis Capital Committee to, again, coordinate, say, all right, you know, the schools need this in this particular year. Let's get together and see if we can make this work for them. And you can't even have a conversation with them. So my personal feeling is let the schools figure out their own capital and go from there, unless it's a major project like replacing a school.
Yeah, I do think though that we have an obligation to keep reaching out to the schools. I believe it may also be a requirement in the charter as well, which we can clarify. If they don't comply, then that's obviously a separate issue. What I'd like to do is, in looking at the 5-year plan, Sandy, I'm very appreciative of seeing a lot of the water department capital items and investment items in there. The board has spent a lot of time on water. The water department and the public works department is really focused on coming up with a comprehensive game plan. And the board has had a chance to review that and discuss that. I'm just wondering if Jeff Colby is in the audience and he can be brought up. And I want to give Jeff an opportunity to speak and comment on any of these items. I'm assuming they're very much consistent with the master plan that the board has already seen and endorsed. But Jeff, please, if you can confirm that, that would be great. And if there's an opportunity to key in on any particular items in the public Works Water Division portion of the capital plan, it would be helpful to hear what you might want to add. Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I would add for a 5-year plan is one of the reasons for raising the water rates late last year, and those have gone into effect now, was because we have $30 million worth of capital projects in water that need to be done over the next 5 years. And so there are significant projects that need to be done. One of the big ones right now is with regards to the pump station rehab project. We did phase 1 and town meeting approved that in the fall. Phase 2 will be coming, very shortly. Phase 1 is underway, under construction right now. And there are projects like that that are in the pipeline. We need to replace some water mains in conjunction with wastewater projects along Route 28 and 6A. So those are just a few of the big ones that are coming that we know about and that we have, raised funds in order to address. So that's just a brief overview. I know, like Sandy said, you have some pretty good detail for FY22, but looking at the next 4 or 5 years out, there's some bigger projects that are in the pipeline for water.
No, I appreciate seeing all these water improvements sort of laid out in the overall plan. I think it's great. I think it's great that they're identified here in the 5-year plan, so we have a real good sense of what's going to be happening over the next 5 years in terms of these improvements. Like I said, I think this has been a priority area for the board, is to focus on getting these laid out, but then figuring out how to finance them. And now we're starting to see things falling into place. So I very much appreciate all the hard work that's gone on to this. And I want to thank you for gearing this all up and getting this before us. So thank you. There is a hand I noticed that's been raised, even though we sort of moved beyond the public section, just to get the board's comments. I'm going to recognize Joe Glenn. Joe, did you have a question on the capital plan or a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I didn't know there was a public meeting on this, so I was not prepared to raise my hand earlier. But when Kurt spoke up, I thought that I should too, especially in regards to the capital plan in the schools. I had this discussion, and I actually first came across my screen when the capital committee came before the board previously, and they made some good points. And I don't think that, I certainly don't think it's a game, but I'm in agreement with everybody that why wouldn't you have a plan, a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, especially when you're supposed to, and it's by charter. I actually inquired, I spoke to Ed Centio about it, and God bless him, Ken Jenks, and I tried to find out about it. And then when the whole appropriations and the budget stuff happened with the district, I was kind of happy that we did use that E&D money to fund those projects that they had set forth for this year. But I was assured, and I will certainly bring it up, because it makes sense that not only a 5-year plan, but a 10-year plan, so that everybody is on the same sheet of music and you can plan it out. I don't know why anybody would be against that. So, but in regards to this year, that money, and I want to say it was 1.3 million that came from E&D that went for boilers and stuff that was given to the town for this year. But I agree that it should go for forward. And the other question I had was, and I kind of agree with Tracy that if we're going to do it, we're actually criticizing the schools for not bringing up the 5-year plan, and here it is right now in front of the selectmen, and we're not going to talk about the 3 or 4 years ahead. When you're trying to plan it out, I don't know why you wouldn't, but I would like to know, well, geez, are we building a library? Is that the plan for $18 million? Are these things just pipe dreams, or is this part of a plan? And I think if the administration and the staff has had questions or want to do these things, I'm not against any one of them in particularly, but if it's a public hearing and a discussion with the selectmen, we should have that discussion. But thanks very much for your time. I apologize for not raising my hand earlier. Thank you.
But that's okay. That's okay. Any other board members have any comments or questions on the 5-year budget plan? If not, we're going to go over to the FY22 plan and presentation. Sandy, do you want to start with
Well,
that?
No, I just want to ensure the public that the details of the 5-year plan is on our committee website.
So it's posted. They can easily get to it by going on the website and searching for it there.
Capital Budget Committee and our presentation, the details of the 5-year and the 10-year plan are on that website, yes.
Thank you.
And Kyle, if you want to pull up our presentation, we can go back to that, to the beginning. Thank you. First, I'd like to thank my committee and thank Pat Armstrong for all her hard work this year. But I'd also like to thank the department heads for their hard work and their patience with all the changes that we've had in the last 2 years. Go to the next slide. For the public's sake, we would just want to tell the public a little bit about how the process works. In October, the Board of Selectmen issues us guidance, and they also issue us goals and objectives for their fiscal year. And those goals and their guidance are weighed heavily by our committee. The town administrator issues calls to the departments and sets the calendar, requests the items that are being requested for not only this year, but for the next 10 years as we put the 5-year and the 10-year plan together. The committee is made up currently of, I believe, 7 members, and we set our schedule. We have liaisons that work with each department and to review the details, and not only the details, but to go and look at the equipment that's being requested. During October and November, the departments come in and we do talk to them. I guess we need to focus a little bit more on talking to them about the 5-year plan, not just the current year plan. So maybe we need to start this process a little bit earlier. But after that, the committee prioritizes their needs and presents it to the Finance Committee. We have come before the Board of Selectmen in December this year. And we also came before the Selectmen in February to do a revised recommendation based on revenue shortfalls. And tonight we're here to present our recommendations to the board and our final recommendations for the town meeting coming forward. So this year we reviewed over 37 items at approximately $4.3 million. We are able to recommend 50% of the overall capital requests, but only 28% of the ones that were eligible for the levy. Since levy funds weren't available, all our recommendations will come from free cash. In the past, we might have had some additional money from the levy to put into the capital improvement fund, but this year we are not recommending anything going into the capital improvement fund. So we have, you can see from the slide, $955,000 from retained earnings. That amount is for the fire department. No, I'm sorry, the water department, which will be in Article 9 on the town meeting warrant. And we'll get into the detail on that. From fire ambulance receipts, $989,000. And from all our items will be recommended from free cash for a total of $2.1 million. If you want to move forward, we can get into the details of our free cash recommendations. As I said, we came before you in December and in February with a recommendation, and we've had to cut that down. We have prioritized over on the right-hand side. We have ranked each item according to what we felt was most important after listening to the departments and listening to the details of each recommendation. These articles you see will appear in Article 10 on the town meeting warrant, which you'll be discussing later tonight. These items will all come from free cash, which in the past we have used, as I said, levy funds. We are here to answer any questions on any one of these particular items. We have, many of these items came from last year. Only 5 of these items are new to this year. So we have reviewed these items over a 2-year period, and many were deferred, and we are recommending them this year. Something new that came before us recently is the police body and cruiser cameras, which we highly recommend. The price on that has really come down since the last time we discussed this. That is the third item for $50,616. That item has been before us on multiple occasions, but this year we are making a recommendation on it, as many of the questions that the committee had in the past have been answered by the chief, and we'd like to recommend moving forward on that. The next slide shows the recommendations from enterprise funds. There are 5 items from the water department recommended this year for a total of $955,000. And we do recommend each one of those. As I said, that is Article 9 on the town meeting warrant. The next item is Article 8 on the town meeting warrant. These items are from the ambulance funds, but I just want to note that the replacement of the pumper, you will hear the details on that article tonight. Some of the money on the replacement of the pumper will come from overlay surplus and will be that will be paid back by the ambulance fund over the next year or so. You'll hear more details on that. But we do recommend all 5 of these items. We've already talked about the 5-year and the 10-year plan. So we could skip over those 2 slides. Many of the items this year, unfortunately, we've had to defer. It's not because we don't recommend them. Many of these items you saw last year, and we recommended them last year, but because of due to funding, we've had to prioritize. If the board does find additional funds or can see funding some of these at the town meeting in the fall, you know, we will be meeting and prioritizing these for that town meeting. But we've only deferred these items mainly because of funding, not because they're not needed. We've, the next slide, please. This just talks about a little bit about the challenges and our recommendation. And we've talked about this before as we come before the board, where we feel sometimes operating expenses are bundled and presented as capital. And when it's possible, we would like to see those reinstated into the budget. If that can happen, and we can get some of these operating expenses reinstated into the budget, maybe the threshold for capital that goes before the committee can be looked at, giving us more time to concentrate on the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan. We're also, you know, we're often reviewing things that should really be part of the budget, not part of a capital plan. We also find every year that with operating expenses within the capital, there's inadequate funding for routine capital. $1.5 million is really not enough, and it has not been increased, at least in the 5 years that I've been here. If some of that item money was put into the operating budget, then maybe the $1.5 million would be adequate. Capital and roadways, we would like to see as soon as possible reinstated into the levy instead of being funded by free cash. And I know the board feels the same way, so we don't, and that may take some time, but that is our recommendation. We also ask that you look at the sidewalk requests. Sidewalks is similar to roadways and should have a yearly program for repairing sidewalks. Unfortunately, this year, we have not been able to recommend the $250,000 for the sidewalk requests. And we hope that that can be funded through the roadways allocation. But due to funding restraints, we could not recommend that. We also find that the information that we're given, we don't know the funding estimates early in the process. And we also know that the board also doesn't know until the school department presents their budget. But we come before you in December, and then we came before you in February, and now we're before you again. Each time we have to make a different recommendation based on funding. And it would, if we had some idea of what free cash would be available to us earlier in the process, or at least know what our funding constraints were, it might make it easier for the committee to work on things like the 5-year and 10-year plan, and not spend all our time redoing what we've already done. So we're here to answer any questions. I thank my committee. We are also working on coastal infrastructure, as the board has requested us to do, working with the departments in administration to hopefully come up with some type of plan for the fall to present to you. We look forward to working with the new town administrator, Bob, and we look forward to his input. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Before we go to the public, I just want to give an opportunity for the town administrator to make any comments or observations that we should be aware of, anything that is of note. Bob or Bob Lawton, is there anything that you want to comment here on what's been presented?
Right now, I would hold my comments and also remind the chairman that under the public hearing for the Finance Committee, Capital Program Committee, the charter does specify that the town administrator presents kind of a financial projection. So maybe when we hear from the two committees, that I would love to give the board a little bit of a financial overview for FY22. But suffice to say, on the capital piece, I would say that I've attended all of the capital budget committee meetings since I've arrived, and I want to thank them for all of their work too. It's been tremendous, and I have a long history of the capital planning process, which I personally feel is one of the most critical financial planning tools that's available to a municipality, because without that strong 5 to 10 year plan, it makes it difficult to prioritize the projects, and sometimes you get in a situation that it feels overwhelming. So I do look forward very much to strongly working with the committee, and some of the things that we can do is really take a hard look at those projects that are in that 5 to 10 year range, and begin to make some critical judgments and get feedback from the board years prior to a project moving forward. So maybe we can, instead of just looking at the 10-year plan, I'd like to see, there's a 23 plan and a 24 plan and a 25 plan. And I think some of the issues in there are where it's appropriate, to begin to make the judgments that, an item that appears in year 10 of a 10-year plan does not require as much detail and refinement as an item that, say, is on right now FY23. It's not in the current year, but it's coming so close. By the time it gets that close, we ought to have had a tremendous amount of vetting on that project. So I think that that's some of the things that we'll work toward doing. I'm very happy to see almost all of the departments very strongly participating. And I think that, we need to work to try to get as much participation from the school department as well. And also, get these details and vet these projects. I have a feeling there's a couple of really big things that are going to be smashed together that we're going to have to, kind of separate out a little bit. But I think it's great to have the plan.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comments and your suggestions. So going forward, next we're going to go to the public, then I'll go to the board, and then in the next presentation after the finance committee, presents their recommendations. We'll go to the public, and then we'll go to the board. And then following that, I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Rittenhour, for some observations in terms of the overall financial picture. I think that's what you're suggesting. And let's do that. And then I'll go to the board for questions on that. And then we'll be done with, the budget hearing and the finance committee budget hearing. Does that work for the board? Okay, very good. Let me go to the public to see if there's any comment or questions from members of the public regarding the FY22 capital budget as presented. And I'm looking. Kyle, tell me if I'm missing somebody, but I don't see anybody to be recognized. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I don't see anyone either.
Okay, very good. Let me go to the board. Let me go to the board members for some comments and questions. I'm going to start with Mike Stone. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only question that I had, Sandy, on the body and cruiser cam expenditure, how far does that get us in that program in terms of the overall cost?
Well, that is just the first year of the costs. And I believe that hopefully the chief is here to explain. This is a multi-year contract, and this is just the first year of the costs. It does include the cameras.
Hi. Here, would you like the chief to speak now and chime
Sure.
in?
That
Okay.
would be great.
Frederickson.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Yeah, what that is the first installment of a multi-year contract. The contract actually has to be looked at in another town meeting, but this will get us going and will get us a long way. What it will do, it'll give us 18 cruiser cams and 33 body cams, and that will be for an annual fee. We were pretty pleasantly surprised when we crunched the numbers. Down the road, we may want more, but for the foreseeable future, that should be enough to get us through.
Thanks, Chief. Go ahead, Steve.
Awesome.
That's all I had at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, Sandy, was there anything else you wanted to add to that? You're all set. Okay.
Thanks.
Very good. Okay, next, I'd like to go to Eric Tolley. Eric, do you have any questions on FY22?
Thank you. And I just want to start by thanking the Capital Budget Committee for all their hard work. I know they put a lot of time and effort into this. Really, the only question I have is the cruiser replacement program. That number is, a fraction more than half of the request. And I'm just wondering, since we have the police chief here, just want to know what his thoughts are on the adequacy of the funding, and will that get him the number of cruisers replaced that he needs? I know we go over this every year, but just interested in his thoughts on that.
Chief, can you respond to that?
Yes. Well, it's a great question. It is not going to be sustainable. Can we limp through this year and do it? Probably. But for the future, no, we can't do that. As you remember, we had a pretty solid replacement schedule, but that got impacted by the fact that some of the cruisers, the newer models, were lasting longer. So we were able to offset some of the reductions temporarily and get by, but that's catching up to us very soon. And I can't imagine going longer than this year without with a good replacement plan, which is what we've been striving for a long time. But we've had a setback because of the budget, obviously.
One more question for you, Chief. Are you looking at electric vehicles, and are they realistic for the type of duty that you put them through?
Yeah, no, we are not looking at electric at this point. There's just not enough out there that would fit our needs. Could it be some admin cars? Maybe, but the cruisers, not. The new ones coming through are hybrids. So we're partway there. They've gotten good reports so far. We got one of them on the road. So, we'll see how that goes. It looks like they work pretty well. They function well.
Okay. One last one. I don't know what Celebrite Tech is. That's new to me.
Cellbrite is a software that allows us to get into cell phones when we get a search warrant for them. That is critical in the investigations, the way they're done nowadays with everything's technology. It's a very expensive piece. Barnstable Police, we've been using theirs, but they have so much going on, they can't sustain letting everybody else use their own. So we really need a piece like that to enhance our investigations.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thanks, Eric.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Pat.
just on Selectman Tully's question about the reduction in the cruiser line, I believe that the total amount asked for, we looked and there was insurance money left over still from previous accidents that was available. And so that $80,000 reduction actually was because there's money available already in the budget to cover that 80,000. So we really didn't reduce the police cruisers as much as we just balanced off that additional money for them. And Judy's agreeing with me. So I think that's an important point. I didn't want the chief to feel that we cut him.
Well, that's not 100% accurate. That was last year's cruises when we were cut last year. So that insurance money we were able to recoup that was sitting in an account to get by with last year's money. This year's it was Mac. We're going to be down to, we won't get any more money, new vehicles on other than what we get in this year's budget.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's not how Ed had presented it to us. And,
Yeah.
and Ed's here. Is that accurate, Ed? I'm sure the chief is right, but I think the committee made that decision based on the information that that insurance money was there.
Yeah, we'll get back to the. We can get back to the.
Ed, please.
The board with, yeah, we can get back to the board with that information. I believe there is some insurance money, but let's make sure that that is entirely accurate.
So
Okay.
follow-up
Thank
question, you know, if there are other monies available, do they need to be reallocated by any type of vote, or is it just a simple take it out of one pocket and put it in another?
Who did you, are you directing that to Sandy?
And anybody that has an answer will be fine.
Yeah. Anybody want to answer that?
The way the reimbursement,
on the money.
the way the insurance reimbursement happens is if there was some damage to a cruiser that we have to replace, then we put in an insurance claim that goes into an insurance account, and that's used to replace that cruiser.
Okay. So it's a vehicle insurance that's, and that money is what's being used to replace or to supplement the cruiser replacement program.
It was used to, I think there are some accidents with some of the cruisers. And that money is used to replace those vehicles that were, totaled in an accident, and so that they can, replenish their cars.
Okay. That's fine.
Anything else, Eric?
No, thank you.
So we're gonna get some more clarification on that, right, Ed?
Yeah, I'm just gonna double check that with Pam.
Okay, very good, thank you. Dan Horgan, Dan, do you have any questions, comments on the FY22 capital plan? I can't hear you for some reason. Can you speak up?
I said, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All set.
Okay, very good, thank you. For our viewers, we're getting reports of some static, and it's sometimes some of the information that's being presented. There's some static in the communication, so hopefully that'll get rectified soon. Mike Stone, Mike, do you have any comments?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions?
No.
And Tracy?
I have two questions. One was with the capital, with the fire department four-wheel drive supervisor pickup truck. Is that a new purchase? Everything else said replacement, that one didn't. So I'm just wondering if we're adding something. And if we are adding it, what was he driving? What's going to happen, or she?
Would you like me to answer that?
Andy would, yeah, please, Chief, could you?
Yeah, that's a replacement. He's currently, can you hear me okay?
There you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's currently driving my old Chief's car, which is a 2010 Expedition. And so we're going to go to a pickup truck with a cap because he does not have the room to put a lot of the medical supplies that he goes and picks up and brings to the other stations. The Expedition does not have the room. So we decided to go with a 4-wheel drive pickup truck with a pull-out slide in between the wheel wells in the back. So it'll be very workable for the EMS supervisor. That's the EMS training supervisor.
Yeah, so that's a replacement. And what's going to happen with the, what will happen with the Expedition?
Well, the Expedition is going to need some work if we decide to keep it. I need a vehicle for the guys to use to go back and forth to the Bridgewater Fire Academy. So the plan was, in order for it to pass inspection, it has some rot. It's not going to pass this year, vehicle inspection. So we're going to need to do some repairs and body work to it. And I thought we would be able to use that vehicle to the candidates that travel back and forth to commute to the Bridgewater Fire Academy.
Might want to find them an electric vehicle. Might be more cost effective.
Well, we have the 2 Ford Escapes also, but they are early hybrids from 2007, 2008, and the cost to maintain those right now is become astronomical because of their age.
Okay, thank you, Chief. The other question I had was really related to the town hall roof. I just want to make sure that we didn't put off something that was going to end up costing us more money in the long run. So if there's leaks or anything that's going to end up costing more damage and make it more expensive, I'm not sure if it's just a normal wear and tear replacement request or if there's actual damage to the roof that needs to be replaced.
Mr. Chair, I could answer that question.
Go right ahead.
Yes, that's on the capital plan, not because it's an immediate need for replacing the roof. It's probably another 3 years out. It's at year 17 of a 20-year shingle that's on that roof. So it's we're not aware of any significant leaks, but it's on the plan because there was discussion with the previous town administrator of doing a new solar panel array on the roof, and we'd certainly want to replace the roof before we upgrade the solar panels on the roof. So
okay, I thought it was on the deferred list.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you. And just getting back to the 5-year plan, I guess my concern is that, you know, the public views that and looks at it as it is our plan. And it's just, I guess maybe it's just a little bit misleading because we haven't had a discussion about the details behind it to verify that really is our plan. And I'd like to have it at some time. I know that right now before town meeting, everybody's busy, but at some point in time, we should really delve into that because you know, I would like your board's recommendations, first of all, in review. And, you know, I think that having that discussion early on will help us with a better plan because what happens oftentimes, like you said, things go on, things go off. It's really not a plan. It's kind of like just a draft recommendation, but I would really love to see a good plan, a thorough plan. So hopefully that's something we can get on our agenda upcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. We're in a total agreement with you, Tracy, on that.
Thanks.
Yeah. And, any other board members? Okay. Sandy, I think the point about the 5-year plan is a very good one that Tracy makes, and I think as a board with a new administrator who's had a lot of experience in terms of capital budgeting and planning, I think as we're going to be in a much stronger position in sort of laying out our priorities and make sure that they're adequately reflected in the long-term plan. And so I think this is work that's clearly a priority and will it certainly be a priority of mine. And obviously the board's very supportive as well. So we'll be looking for a town administrator to provide some more leadership to the rest of the group on this. So thanks for focusing on that and emphasizing that. The only other thing I'd like to say is just again a thank you. We've got Sandy Fife, Will Rubenstein, Kurt Sears, Robert Chiavara, Lindsay Pietro, Kathy Heislop, Judy Connors Tarver. Thank you all for all your service and hard work. This is a tough job. Capital is not an easy job. And so we really appreciate all the time and energy and effort that you put into this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to the department heads and to Pat.
Okay. We're going to move on, and we're going to kind of do the same thing with the finance committee. We're going to let them make their presentation. We're going to give anybody in the public who has a question for them, to give them an opportunity to raise it, and then we'll go to the board to see what questions or comments the board might have. So if we could tee up the finance committee, and I'm getting some messages here coming across my computer that my internet connection is unstable. So I apologize if you're having trouble hearing me or other board members. Maybe we need to add to the 5-year capital plan, IT, network improvements, and other communication improvements. Maybe that's something that we can focus on when we revisit the 5-year plan, Mr. Administrator. So do we have all of our finance committee people here? I see Sarah's here, George, and Brian is here. I think we've got everybody. So Brian, we're going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Brian Gardner, Chairman of the Finance Committee. Mr. Chairman, thank you for having us here this evening, members of the board. I'd like to start out by thanking the committee members and all the hard work they've put in. I know the hours and hours of Zoom screen time has been challenging at best. And we certainly hope to resume in some in-person type meetings fairly soon. So that's what we hope, although we like to see everybody, but it is challenging. Kyle, can you put up the presentation for me? Thank you. So the 4 key points this evening that we're going to talk about, and we're going to have a fairly brief conversation, is the difficult budgeting year, the wastewater support, other priorities moving forward, and opportunities. Slide 2, please, Kyle. So as you're all aware, the town budget was in the Proposition 2.5. We did need an override for the schools, however, the DY Regional School District. We had a tremendously difficult budgeting year due to the uncertainties of the pandemic, both in fiscal year 21 and in fiscal year 22. In addition, the committee and the town both had to contend with the fact that the school assessments did not reach us until rather late in the budgeting process, which means we had to scramble to modified budgets to minimize the impact on our tax rate. It was a challenge, both mentally and time-wise. Also, as you're well aware, of course, is that the Board of Selectmen is in favor of a $420,000 override due to the increase of the DY school budget, roughly $1.85 million above. I think of note also is that there was a higher increase in the Cape Tech budget, roughly $362,000. And this was really due to more Yarmouth students going to tech. And I think as a town, we should be really happy about that. They create great jobs, and hopefully some of those students will come back and be tax-paying members of our town. Also of note is that DY is paying their short-term debt for the middle school borrowing to minimize our tax rate for our citizens for 1 year, which is roughly $700,000. This doesn't help the budget, but it certainly helps the tax rate. And schools also, and this was discussed earlier in capital budget, schools are paying for their capital ask out of their fiscal 21 budget, which did free up a small amount of money for our capital needs. And finally, with this slide, both the Finance Committee and the Capital Budget Committee spent months on the initial budget. We had it balanced. And once the school number was provided, our teams had to go back and really start from scratch, which was a challenge. Kyle, next slide, please. So wastewater is something that we talk about a tremendous amount, and I know that it has strong support within the community as well as the board and our committees. I think the key takeaway is that, you know, if we plan on adding items to our levy over time, we either do it in two fashions. We either reduce expenses or we increase revenues. One's good, one's not so good. I know there was an analysis done of the 10-year non-salary expenses that showed very little increase in those expenses over the last decade, which basically means that fixed costs are going to continue to rise. And if we don't increase revenue, we are going to have to cut we're going to have to cut rather than maintain the same level of support for our citizens. And to cut expenses, it means cutting salary dollars. It's not, you know, your typical, you know, printer paper. And unless we cut whole programs, it's going to be employees. And, you know, we looked back at the Great Recession, which is, I think, 11 years now. We cut 20% in our staff and salaries, and we turned one of our libraries into over to a nonprofit. So why that's important with wastewater is that wastewater allows us to grow our revenues. I also think it's really instructive, and I think our town needs to understand this, and especially the ones that are going to eventually get a chance to vote on this, that there was a plan in 2011 and it had a sum of $55 million for construction. That estimate's currently at $146 million. Not a math genius, but that roughly equates to about $9 million per year that we've accrued by not doing this in 2011. I do recognize that the 2011 plan was not as extensive as this one, but it still is a fair point. And it also doesn't take into effect all the growth that we would have received in revenue over those years as well. And I think a perfect example is we look at, you know, the plethora of hotels we have, or motels on our strip in Yarmouth, you know, that may or may not be fully occupied at times. They might be slightly run down because they haven't had the ability to upgrade. And I think wastewater is the key to unleashing and unlocking that ability for them to upgrade those hotels. It brings in more residents, it brings in more rooms tax and meals tax, and it increases property values across the board. And to that point, if we look back over the last nearly 20 years, our commercial tax base has decreased, and it is solely in our mind due to the wastewater issue that we have. Residential taxes in 2002, almost 20 years ago, was 85% roughly. It's now at almost 91%, which is a decrease of commercial tax base of roughly 6%. I know there was a study done by the Donahue Institute that said that $100 million in property value would be created with $1 million in tax revenue if we have the proper wastewater infrastructure. I think that's very important to know. We also talked about that positioning ourselves, if we have a plan for these quote unquote shovel ready jobs with the infrastructure bill that might get approved this year or next year is relatively important. And it also shows, if we have something on paper, good faith efforts in the event that the Conservation Law Foundation were to ever sue us over wastewater, which could potentially happen as well. Kyle, could you go to the next slide, please? So other priorities moving forward. I know it's an initiative of the town and the Board of Selectmen to get the road money and 1.5 million in capital back into the tax levy. I think the prior slide talks about, you know, how we increase our revenue, and this would help us get roads and $1.5 million back into the tax levy. So we need to regrow our tax base. We need to grow local receipts. And, we think that growing local receipts could happen as soon as the pandemic's over, as soon as they subside. So perhaps 2023, maybe summer 2022. And we'll be, closely monitoring those local receipts using the revenue trend reports that we receive on a monthly basis, and start to evaluate that going forward. But we need to, continue, and as Sandy Fife had mentioned, to build a long-term capital plan and refresh the capital budget outlook. Would like to work towards restoring capital spending within the tax levy and increasing capital spending commensurate with budget growth. We didn't put a specific percentage on there. I think 2.5% has been talked about, but we would like to, see that dollar amount grow, as wastewater investments and school budgets allow us to. Kyle, next slide, please. So here's our opportunities. Obviously the post-COVID rebound, which I just addressed. We talk a lot about the stable bond rating. I mean, we're currently AA+, which is, near the top. We would love to get to AAA. It's very important from a tax or a borrowing standpoint on the municipal level to get to AAA. We are currently, and we talk about this a lot too, we are at historic low interest rates, something none of us have ever seen. This gravy train has to end at some point. Rates will go up. I don't know if anybody caught the comment by Treasury Secretary Yellen today, but she did allude to the fact that interest rates have to move up to cool down this quote unquote hot economy. I don't quite see that yet, but I'm sure she's correct. So we're going to have an instance where interest rates start to go up, and I think it's imperative that the town takes advantage of these low rates to fund such projects that capital needs have been talking about. So we just need to take advantage of this. Coastal infrastructure, wastewater, other big ticket items. There's plenty out there. There's a list that goes on that we have not thought about borrowing for, and we really should. So, Kyle, next slide. That's all I have for you. I would open it up to any questions.
Okay, that's great, Brian. Thank you very much. Because this is a public hearing, I'm going to give the opportunity for the public to weigh in and ask the Finance Committee questions. I'm looking at who's here. Kyle, do we have anybody in the public seeking recognition? I don't see anybody.
Yeah, I don't see anyone seeking recognition at this time.
That's a bummer.
Let me circulate questions from the board. Let me start with Tracy. Tracy, do you have any comments or questions for the Finance Committee?
I don't. I just want to thank them all for their hard work and your ability to refocus on the fly. It's been a constant battle every year where we spend our year planning, and then at the last minute we need to regroup and pivot. So I'm sorry that you have to go through that exercise, and I just am very appreciative. Thank you.
Dan Horgan. Dan, do you have any comments, questions for our?
Actually, just same comment. I appreciate the pivoting. It was a great presentation, and appreciate all the work that goes into the Finance Committee's job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Mike Stone, any comments? For
just one quick comment that I'm in agreement with the general overview of the presentation, Mr. Chairman, and I too would like to thank each of the members for their dedication and their hard work in not only putting this budget together, but also the work they've done in the past. I really appreciate it.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I think in looking at your presentation, I mean, it's clear that both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee are pretty much in sync. We as a board have talked about the importance of striving to get a AAA bond rating, to strive to improve our overall financial management and performance. As I'm sure you're aware, we're doing a financial management review right now to find ways in which we can strengthen our financial position in the town. And we're looking forward to getting that report sometime in the next month or two. And obviously, we will want to invite you to that meeting so you can share in the discussion with those that have been involved in this review. So your comments are all on target, and we appreciate all your hard work. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And with that, you're excused.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, now to comply with the full requirements of the hearing notice, I'm going to ask Bob Rittenauer to just comment a bit on the financial projections or any other financial observations that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask Kyle to, don't even have to ask Kyle. It comes up like magic. Firstly, I really need to acknowledge a couple of people. I want to thank Ed Centio for all of his time and effort in the past few weeks that I've been here to bring me up to speed on, a very complex set of financial issues. He does tremendous work for the town, and I really would like to acknowledge him, and also Bob Lawton for just everything he's done to bring me up to speed so quick. And I really also want to acknowledge the Finance Committee, having participated in their individual discussions at the meeting, sort of apart from the Selectmen. It really puts a lot of the numbers into a very stronger context that I appreciated very much. So that enables me to just give you a brief financial overview of where I see some of the things sitting for fiscal year 22. I want to tell you, in addition to all of the financial analysis that we've had out of the finance department, which is tremendous, on my own, I've prepared a fairly detailed 6-year analysis of all of our revenues and expenditures that goes back a 5-year period of actuals and tracks the trends with revenues and expenses generally, and then looks forward to the next fiscal year, kind of to build my confidence in where we'll stand with all the numbers. And I can start with just simply breaking down in terms of our annual budget, where the revenues are coming from. Thanks, Kyle. Basically, the town's budget, and I think is no secret, is very largely fueled by the property taxes at 73% of the town's total budget. And then we also have the non-property tax local revenues that we can talk a little bit about it, come in at about, a quarter of the budget. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It's really come to be, I think, quite a joke for our region that only 1% of our budget is comprised of state aid. Now, that doesn't include the educational budget of state aid that goes to the regional school, but this is the money that comes directly to the town that we have available to town meeting to fund our needs. And to give the specifics on the outlook, that 73% of the budget is 69,583, roughly 69,583,000 roughly. So the 73% of the budget tax levy, figure at 69.5. Our non-property tax local revenues comes in just over 25 million, 25,436. And the total, that 1% on the cherry sheet, so-called state aid, is about $733,000 when you net the amount of money that we get from the cherry sheet, which at its gross level is about 1.7 million, but you have to net from that the state charges that they give you. The actual cherry sheet is really a list of bills that we get from the state. And that totals about, almost $1 million. So the amount we have left over is 733. So the total revenue picture that I see us in this ratio available for fiscal year 2022 is about $95.5 million. Total revenues available to support the town's operations. And I'm happy to report that, have you seen from the Finance Committee, the recommended budget falls within the available revenues with the proposed, I think it's $420,000 override. So I think based on the spending program that you have for fiscal year 22, it's solid in terms of being fundable under Prop 2.5. And we can show the next slide. I'd like to maybe just hone in on a couple of trends that you're looking at that shows where you've been and where you're going. And it's very happy for me to see, and this is one of the biggest things that I look for when you're dealing with the largest segment of the town's total revenue picture, which is the property tax. Again, and it's at this point around 69 million. What you see over this 6-year trend is a very stable environment. That there aren't a lot of peaks and valleys. The property tax increases if you're at the levy limit by a maximum of 2.5% per year. And in addition to that, we've had a couple of small overrides over the past 5 years that has allowed the property tax levy to grow slowly. I'm willing to bet slower than what the current growth in property values are. So it would be nice for a residential taxpayer to see, the equity in their homes and the value of their property growing faster than what the total amount the town raises in taxes, which keeps the tax rate very stable, which it has been stable. If there's one cautionary outlook, I think it ties in a little bit contextually to what Brian was raising on the whole issue of creating new revenue. The two ways that the property tax levy can increase, aside from an override or a debt exclusion, it goes up to 2.5 per year, but it also increases by virtue of any new growth in town. And that's over and above the 2.5. So if there is new construction, that new construction will directly fuel new property tax growth without increasing the tax rate. This would be new taxes on property or improved properties that value wasn't here last year. And one of the problems that you're facing is you go through this 6-year analysis and you see the revenues derived from the new growth really capped in recent years at, say, the $400,000 level. And I would submit to you that with nearly $70 million in property tax levy, it would be an optimal situation if the amount of new revenue that comes from the new growth were much higher, even double that. And if with new construction happening, with public infrastructure that assists in private investment in properties in your community, it will be reflected directly in this chart as additional property tax levies on that large base that don't impact the tax rate. And I just want to call that out a little. That's what the Finance Committee is talking about. And that's real. That's the money that we need to fund future services. And, we're a little bit, it's been slow in some of the new growth, but I think that hopefully that is an area we're going to watch closely together and we might see that improve. Maybe we could jump to the next slide. But that's a little bit on the property tax. We could talk a lot more about that. I want to talk a little bit about the pandemic, and I want to talk about the financial planning that's gone on to date. And I want to talk about the conservative budget philosophy that has guided the Yarmouth town budget, and why one of the reasons I think moving forward that we're in fairly good shape. If you take a look, this is a very interesting chart. It takes a portion, maybe the largest portion of our non-property tax local revenues, which is, that 25% of the budget that's not property taxes. And this hones in on the local estimated receipts, which is sort of a laundry list of local non-property tax receipts that A lot of them are governed by economic factors. These are things such as your motor vehicle excise, the meals tax, rooms tax, things such as the building permits, fines and forfeits, a lot of things that are related to economic activity. So they're very sensitive to changes, fluctuations in economic activity. And if you take a look at the 2019 to 2020 timeframe, I've measured out there what the actual receipts per year that the town collected were, and you can see that it's, you know, just up over the $18 million threshold, and they started dropping off last year, and in the spring, in early spring, when the pandemic set, you know, that there was a disastrous impact, you know, just the chilling of local economic activity that really threatened these receipts. Now, the town was able to act, I feel, pretty quickly in revising the budget that is in the current fiscal year and starting those revisions by analyzing the estimates for these revenue collections for the items that are most susceptible to economic fluctuation. And as a result of that, there was a conscious conservative budgeting effort to reduce, where it says budget FY21, to reduce those estimates in order to accommodate a decline in revenues that wouldn't cause a deficit. So in addition to recommending, you know, maybe a 25 or so % reduction in what those revenues were, the spending was also slowed down. And those two items together, I think, are what gives us the most confidence moving into 2022. As it turns out, now I haven't seen the April figures. I know they're due out this week, but judging from the figures through the end of March, we have in fact seen that decline in the estimated receipts for 2021. It's not as bad as was originally estimated. It's, you know, more in the 10% decline range, which means that this budget estimate that we have of the, you know, 15.5 or so in 2021, the town will meet that and will exceed that budget estimate for the year. So the conservative planning to reduce those revenue estimates to levels that would not be hurt by the pandemic was successful. And that, as you can see, moving into 2022, in addition to having collections in 21 that are going to be in excess of that lowered recommendation, we begin to build back in some growth for fiscal year 2022 to get back to the levels that we had seen previously. Let's jump to the next slide and see what it shows. I thought it was particularly important to point out too, on a 6-year basis, the free cash spending by the town, in addition to the general budget that supports the town's operations. And I would say that, you know, this proves that over a long period of time, let's just say the free cash spending in support of the budget has been vigorous, okay? You know, $3 million plus a year in actual spending to augment town's operations, you know, that's a very healthy pace. And to the town's credit, you see this amount has been able to be sustained for quite a long period of time. And it's not a situation where, oh, we had 3 million and we spent that, now we have 2 million, we spent that, now we have 1 million. It's come in at a fairly good clip every year, and these funds are critical towards meeting town needs. You see this year, it's all tied up in the capital. And I would say from what I've seen in terms of the performance of the town in collecting slightly more than those lowered conservative budget estimates, that we should be in another situation next year to be able to sustain this amount as well. That I don't see the free cash being drastically lowered from this year to next year. But I do think that we should be mindful of, this trend, and the fact that in addition to what we consider to be the recurring revenues moving forward, that we have, that there's a solid amount of the previous year's fund balance that's pumped into meeting town needs. And it's been successful, but it does bear sort of a close scrutiny. So based on a few of these trends, let's get to the next slide, Kyle. It shows, what I see as an overview of some of our critical challenges that we have facing us as we move into fiscal year 22. First of all, we see that continued growth in local estimated receipts without overestimating. I might mention, when you talk about that local estimated receipts piece, if you collect more than you estimate, it's fine. That just helps the general fund, and it allows you to have more flexibility. But heaven forbid, if you don't collect what you estimate, what that does is in the ensuing fiscal year, it causes an actual cash deficit, which absolutely makes you lower your costs, take apart town services in order to meet those deficits. So we need to be careful and bring back those local estimated receipts step by step, not all at once, so that we're insured every year. There should be at least a 10% or so cushion of that you're collecting more than you've estimated. And that way, you'll have some fund balance at the end of the year. So we need to pay very close attention to those local estimated receipts and make sure that they continue to be conservative. We have this problem of, in order to, meet our service needs with the revenues not growing real fast, we've taken some of, the capital and roadway funding out of the tax levy and placed that out in the free cash. And that's one of the things we're spending so much free cash on. We need to work together as these revenues come back, hopefully to restore that capital and roadway funding under the levy. But it has to be done in a safe way over time. If you did it all at once, it's the same on the revenue side. You put so much pressure on the general fund that now you can't fund your town services. So there's a balance in doing that. And then we should definitely enter into a program that people can be comfortable with the manner in which that's done, not just that it's done. Again, attempting to fund operating budgets within the limits of Prop 2.5. I put that up there, that I take that as our number one challenge, that's what we need to try to do, is to keep the overall costs under Prop 2.5 to the greatest extent possible. But one of the big problems we face in doing that is that regional educational formula, that it can be very volatile because there's two parts of it, right? There's not one part of it. There is the school budget, and there are changes in the school budget. And then there is enrollment, and there are changes in enrollment. And when you have sort of the wind and the tide against you at the same time, it can make it very difficult to get back to my little dock behind me. It's why we're putting up those signs. And so how to keep those volatile educational costs from eating up what we need for police, fire, DPW, that's very, very hard. And there's another item that I want to bring up to the board, because when you talk about the budget for FY22 and what we're doing, is you need to be ever mindful that we have a very aggressive financial plan in place for the wastewater development. And I reviewed the plan, and I think the plan's excellent. It needs, filling out to, become completely implementable. But the critical design of the plan funds very large amounts of wastewater without putting pressure directly on the property taxes, uses a wide range of resources to do that. Now, the reason that that's important today is because in order for that plan to work, there is a very aggressive pre-funding component. When we talk about when we're going to move forward and when we're going to start building the system, but you need to know that in my view, there's about 3.5 years that the goal is we need to have, before we start paying back any money for wastewater, we need to have $9.5 million in the bank, pre-funded. That $9.5 million is critical in the early stages of paying back the bonds or the zero interest loans, or the whole amalgam of financing tools, without having a cash shortfall that requires us to go to the property tax and the general fund. So we'll be looking, and you'll see that, and we have to work together at coming up with $9.5 million over the next 3.5 years. It's a lot of money. There's sources, it can be done, but we need to keep focusing on that. And those are, just scratching the surface, some of the critical issues we're going to see moving forward. And I've got one more slide just in order to give you the overview totally. For FY22, the total recommended budget is up $95,475,146. That's about 5.2% up from last year. And that, you got your 2.5% going in there, plus restoring some of the revenues that we took down from last year. That's why it's a little bit over the 2.5%. But it is in balance. The funds are there. The capital spending, as you know, is recommended primarily from free cash. The educational expenses in the budget, for the reasons that we talked about exactly, are rising faster than the overall budget. And, that's a little disconcerting. We need to be mindful. Was it Brian that was talking about that we studied the expense accounts for 10 years and found they've been level funded for 10 years? Well, you can't just level fund them forever. And so that's a critical issue there. And obviously, again, most of the budgets and services that you see for FY22 have been level funded. There's not a lot of new initiatives, but the bottom line is it works. It's within Prop 2.5. It gives us a lot of challenges moving forward. It's not going to bankrupt the town. It's not going to significantly raise taxes, but at least I think it puts us in a position that we can work, towards next year and at least having a shot at putting together the next year's budget. So that's the sum total of my remarks. I don't know if Ed wants to chime in on anything, but if there's any questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
But before I go to the public, I'm going to give Ed a chance if he would like to pick up on anything that needs to be addressed. Ed, is there anything that you want to add?
I want to add that Mr. Rittenauer is a quick study. He gives me way too much credit. He's been able to assimilate the budget and the nuances of the budget probably in the first week, but definitely has taken a deep dive over the course of the next few weeks. So he has a really good grasp of where we are and has a handle of where we want to go. I do want to say just one point. Some of our free cash spending has gone to stabilization, has gone to OPEB. So, when we say spending, some of it has been, put into reserve accounts to make sure that we can bolster our bond rating. But otherwise, I think it's a great presentation, and Mr. Rittenauer has done a great job.
Thank you very much, Ed. So in keeping with the public hearing notice, I'm just going to ask if there's anybody in the public that has a comment or question for the administrator. And I see Joe Glenn has his hand up. Mr. Glenn, do you have a comment, question?
Yeah, just Mr. Chairman, just two quick things. One, I want to commend everybody, the board and the administrator, and I think Ed Centio downplays his role, and he's been wearing so many different hats and doing a great job at it. And I don't think that any members of the board overlooked that, and I'm sure Mr. Wittenauer doesn't either. But it's great that everybody's passing the positive buck to each other, but it's a great job. My question to Mr. Whitnauer and to Mr. Centio is on that bond rating. What are the prospects? Do we think that it could go up for us? Do we think it's going to stay the same? I don't think it's going to go down because of their good custodial administration, but I'm just curious to see, do we think our bond rating could improve with the stabilization and the prospects in the future?
Mr. Rittenauer was not here during our previous bond rating. I think he's going to be a tremendous asset to our next set of bond ratings. Let me tell you where we are with our bond rating, the individual components. We are, from a management standpoint, a financial management standpoint, at the highest level you can be from an S&P standpoint. In many other factors, we're at the highest level we can be. We really pushed because other people were getting a high economic score, that's 30% of our score. We pushed on that hard. They did not want to give us a AAA during a COVID pandemic. They actually downgraded our debt. So we were at very strong with our debt. We have almost no debt at this point in time, but they downgraded us from a very strong to a strong because of what they see we will be spending in the future for wastewater. And, you know, I argue that that is not our current picture. That is our prospective picture. What they want to see is how we fund wastewater and how we manage the funding of wastewater. They've given us a 2-year horizon. They say, we're not going to upgrade you next year, but depending on how you manage the wastewater, and to Mr. Rittenauer's perspective of, you know, the pre-funding, if we show the pre-funding, if we are stable everywhere else, I think we have a great shot at it. We've had a great shot at it, you know, for many years, but we don't borrow enough. So when the economy was up, you know, we didn't have a rating review, so we didn't get the AAA. But those things that we can control, except for the debt rating, we have very strong scores. And one of the other items is something that we can deal with very easily with spinning off more free cash. But, you know, they just, it's a difficult situation. And, you know, one of the things they looked at was our contingent liability. That's our putting away money for OPEB. I know the school has been hot on doing that. I think as Mr. Plath over in Dennis indicated, it's about the town getting our OPEB house in order, not the school, because the school's bond rating is based on what the town's bond rating is. So we have great prospect of a AAA, but I think we might have to wait 2 years, and they'll have to see how we handle wastewater to understand where we are with our next bond rating.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I just wanted to ask in regards to the wastewater, because so much stuff is out of our control with other towns. Are we keeping our options open and keeping a level of communication with Barnstable and all kinds of options to see where we could best make those decisions so that the town going forward has the best opportunity to create the type of revenue that you guys envision with the, you know, I know there's an issue about discharge, but I think all those conversations are going to be very important when we go to the town and ask about the money. So I just want to ask if we're having a dialogue already with Barnstable to keep our options open.
I believe we are. I'm going to let Bob Rittenauer expand on that. He's had a lot of discussion with officials in Barnstable.
Yes, all options are open right now and on the table. I'll just leave it at that we're preparing to be able to move forward. You know, this town, you know, needs to have some progress, and we've got some deadlines. So yes.
Thank you very much. Great job.
You're welcome. Anybody else from the public? Okay. Let me move on to board members. I'm going to just start off with Dan Horgan. Dan, do you have any Comments, questions for the administrator on the financial projections?
No, I appreciate the presentation. I didn't see that in our packet. I was wondering if we could get a copy of that sent to us.
Certainly.
Okay. Nothing other than that, Mr.
Okay, great. Mike, any comments, questions?
I'm glad that Ed had a chance to just briefly go over some of the elements of a bond rating, and particularly the financial management component, which I think he said was about 30%. We have in the past always had strong financial management, certainly the time I've been on the board the last 8 years. And I think that that's obviously going to continue. I think Bob Wittenhauer is going to bring a new dimension to that, because he's got 30 years experience roughly in budgeting of towns of comparable size, some of them Mashpee and Falmouth, which is a larger town than we are. It's going to have probably an educational experience dealing with the DY regional school budget like we all do, and probably have less hair, you know, a few years from now than he has now. But the wastewater project, it is a concern to bond rating agencies because of its enormous cost over time. They're not going to just look at phase one, but it's every 5 years there's going to be a new phase coming, and the financial plan that's laid out right now is just really for the first phase. So there is a lot of uncertainty there, and the more money we can put into this in terms of front loading it, obviously, the better off we're going to be, and I think the better chance we're going to have to get that uptick in the bond rating. But still, AA+ is a very, very good place to be right now, particularly in this economy with its challenges. So I want to thank Ed for all the work he's put into it, and I'm not surprised by his comments about how quickly Bob Wittenhauer is picking things up in terms of the overall financial picture here. And of course, having Bob Lawton in the bullpen never hurts. So I think we're in good, capable hands financially right across the board. And I have no concerns about that at all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. I'm going to ask Eric. Eric,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Tracy, comments, questions for Bob?
No, thank you for the overview. It's obvious that you have a good understanding of many of the facets of what we're dealing with. As Ed said, we're very fortunate to have Ed. We've been on the board, I think 11 years now. So we've been through some tough times. We bounced back. And so I think we learned a little bit from that in the past. And I guess that's some of the reasons. And one of the slides that you showed about our own budget being level the way that it is, it's really not sustainable long term, which is what my frustration was with the way that we planned the school for the school budget. I completely understand the board's position on that and getting a budget passed. I understand that, but it's always at, unfortunately, the sacrifice of us making any progress whatsoever, which is extremely frustrating. So to the extent that we can, I've said it for years, work with them. I know Carol tried really hard this year to be creative and keep that number low. But it's an annual event, and it's just very, very difficult for our town budget to sustain. We've been doing it for as long as I've been here, and at some point in time, I think our departments, the service calls for services in our public safety and so on and so forth go up. The requests and the desires, the needs of all of our town departments are changing. Some of it we can do more efficiently, which I think with technology, we've been able to sustain that and not not need a significant amount more money. Thank goodness. So we are definitely in good hands, but we need to have more cooperation with the school district in terms of the overall number and, communicating with us on capital and operating as early as possible. I'd just like to point out when you stress the state's gross receipts, it is kind of gross. I always say it's a curse, but it's also a benefit because as we fall into these issues when we have, a pandemic, we're fortunate to the fact that we don't count on them as much as a lot of other towns do. And they really have budgetary issues when their funds get cut from the state. So as minuscule as it is really, and not even close to what we send up do we get back. I think the entire Cape has that issue, but it is gross. That's all I'm going to say. But I appreciate your hard work on this and your overview. We definitely have work to do, and I'm looking forward to accomplishing it together. And thanks to Bob and Ed.
That's great. Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I would recommend, if you haven't read it already, and you probably have, it's the 2011 Financial Management Review, which I think sort of laid out a pretty, I don't want to say grim, but it was sort of a borderline grim assessment of the challenges awaiting the town. And this town stepped up and weathered the storm. And I think that's a great starting point, a great reference point. Another comment, and it sort of follows up on Tracy's point, and that is it may be helpful at some point to do an exercise on the expenditure and service side, where you take the departments individually, look at how much spending and resources they've had to see how much they've been flatlined, and then put on the graph as well service outputs. Like, for example, in the building department, how many permits they've had to handle year to year. Fire department, the number of calls year to year. I'm glad Tracy keeps bringing this up, because I know some department heads have been really under a lot of stress, and there hasn't been much room for improvement, and it's been a big challenge. So at some point, maybe there'll be an opportunity to do an exercise like that, looking at the service side, the expenditure side, and look at just how much more productive or how much additional work burden has been placed on some of these departments without a heck of a lot of relief. And that'll give you another dimension to the challenges that we've been facing. So I would suggest that. My final point is that you mentioned that we've got some work to do on wastewater, and I think we have to speak to this also in the context of the ballot question. This board has supported a wastewater or water investment fund, infrastructure investment fund. We're going to have a ballot question, and I think to some degree we need to be able to educate the voters relatively soon as how that fits in with addressing our need to make some fairly quick investments in wastewater. So that's part of the education campaign that I know a number of people have been talking about, but that's sort of the specifics of it. The voters, we need to be able to educate the voters over the next few weeks exactly how that's going to work and how it helps address this need to start making investments in wastewater relatively soon. So maybe we want to spend a little bit more time talking about this, at a meeting or two. Maybe we could talk about this when we get to agenda items. But I do think we not only have a challenge, but we have an opportunity now to start educating people right away as to how we address the problem and the opportunity to address it, in the election with this ballot question, establishing this fund and how that's going to work. So we need to be able to clearly explain that, because sometimes these things get confusing and sometimes difficult to understand. So I'll just sort of lay that out there. I appreciate the presentation, and I too share your kudos to Ed. He's got tremendous bandwidth, and he's a great resource, and we're very lucky to have him. So at this point, we're pretty much done with the public hearing. Before we move on to the next agenda item, let me just ask the town administrator or the interim assistant, is there anything else we need to do to fully comply and dispense with this particular item. If we pretty much satisfied our obligations with respect to the hearing and the charter and everything else,
I
Bob?
think you're set.
I think you are.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Very good. Just checking. Just want to make sure before we leave that there's no loose end here. I don't like loose ends, you know. Okay, next item is the final recommendations on the 2021 annual town meeting warrant. As I understand it, we had Article 10, I think we had not acted on, which was capital. We wanted to have this hearing tonight. And then we had some CPC business, some of which is still in a state of flux. I'm not sure we're at a point where we can conclude any of that. So would it be your recommendation, Bob, that we maybe consider a recommendation on Article 10 capital? Which I'm looking for a recommendation on which articles remaining in the warrant you think we have now enough information to address and recommend. I can see this article.
Can we just
Go ahead,
verify that total? I believe when we had the capital budget, I thought it was 4 million. Is that the same as the presentation tonight? Hold on, I can go back and look.
I think in the warrant, Article 10 is 3,098,954. Capital and certain other free cash items. I think, well, looking it up, Mr. Chairman, I think the three articles are 10, 15, and 17. As you said, 15, you're waiting for the CPC to have their meeting, I think, next week to decide whether they want to change the veterans amount or not. So I don't know you can take a position tonight. And on 17, that's the Higgins Crow Road purchase. And probably next week, Mr. Whitnauer and I will be suggesting that maybe you want to indefinitely postpone it because, as we said last week, the new buyer is going to be closing on the 15th of May. There's not much time to try to negotiate some other purchase of a portion of that property. So that may be something that's held until later. So maybe Article 10 is the only one you might deal with. And Bob Whitnauer can certainly confirm that.
That's great. Bob, did you want to chime in? Or you?
No, that's very, very succinct.
Good. So the question now is, I think Tracy asked if we've got.
I'm just looking, I don't see that number in anything in the presentation earlier, so I just want to verify that that number that's printed there is.
Yeah, the Article 10, I think as Bob mentioned, has all of the capital, plus on the second page, there's a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 additional free cash spending items that are added to the total free cash spending.
Possibly Centio can confirm those numbers for you, Tracy, which might be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I just did a chat, but I'm not sure, Tracy, if you're thinking about Articles 8, 9, and 10 together, that's, a little bit less than 4 million.
Okay, I just did not see this 3098 in our presentation from free cash. This is the free cash number, right?
That's the free cash number. Part of that was capital related and part of that is other spending.
So two different sources, two different lists that we were presented.
Yeah, today the Capital Budget Committee presented their capital lists, and then there are also additional items that were non-capital related.
Okay, so the free cash capital was 2,173,871.
Correct.
And then what's the balance, the difference from?
About 500,000, but I can calculate that for you.
I just want to make sure that we got the same lists, that we're approving the accurate number. Sorry.
I'm assuming Ed's working on that.
We can't hear the calculator going, but
I'm doing it. Yeah.
Do it on one of the old ones.
Yeah, got to pull the handle. So when you look at items all the way down to the second from the bottom
Yep.
on page 18, that's the $2 million plus. And then when you go from the last two items down to the end, that's where you get the total of the 3,098,000.
Okay, so Article 10, that number's correct.
That's correct, yes.
So is the board comfortable acting on this tonight, or do you think you need more time, more information? I'm just gonna put that out there. Mike, are you ready to jump on this, or do you need more time on it?
So not all the free
We can
cash.
act on that.
You're comfortable with it? I think we lost Dan Horgan because I know he's asking him feeling well. So Eric, any thoughts? Are you ready to move on this, or do you want to get some more information?
This is 10.
And
Yes,
yeah,
Article 10, if we want to recommend.
I'm ready to move on it, yes.
Okay.
Can I just ask a few questions? I just wanted to verify. So the Green Community Coordinator you said was not staff, that was going to be a grant or a, how is that being funded?
We had a that would be funded with free cash for 1 year. We want to make sure we can continue to get the green communities money from year to year, but I think Mr. Rittenauer has some ideas where that might be funded with less money, so we may not get up to that amount. But we did a procurement 6 months ago to try to determine what it might cost for a non-employee consultant to do that work for us, and that was the approximate cost.
Okay, so the OPEB, is this even covering the 71.8? That's the only funding, or is there funding from other places going to OPEB? Ed?
Yeah, there's funding from the water department and the golf department. This was OPEB that was in the general fund that we pulled out to be funded with free cash.
So does this cover our annual,
This does not cover our annual required contribution, no.
It does not.
Nope. I think we're going to have a pretty good free cash number for the fall town meeting. And I think we need to take a look at that because we have almost the highest discount rate, which reduces our liability significantly, which also is important for the bond rating. So I think we need to step up the funding if we can going forward.
Well, that's disappointing. We were covering our current plus for some time. Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion to recommend Article 10 as printed in the warrant? Anyone?
I'll make the motion to recommend.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, please.
Ed, what would the, if we were to make the regular OPEB contribution in the fall, and approximately how much would that be?
I'd have to recalculate that. We've missed a couple of years of funding the ARC for OPEB. And again, that's the annual required contribution so that we can have that highest discount rate. You know, I'm thinking it's going to be more than $500,000, but those were some of the investments we used or utilized free cash for in the last, several years to try to address that liability. And that's, when we can, that's, that's one of the things where if we don't have the money, we don't do it. That's been the issue the last 2 years.
I get that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Tracy, do you have any? No?
No, I just feel like this process seemed just so late in the game for me this year to wrap my mind around all the components. We're just
Blame it on COVID.
Okay.
Because I think COVID it created a huge disruption to our normal way of doing things. Hopefully we can get back to normal soon. Okay, any more questions? Any more discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor to recommend Article 10 as printed in the warrant. Roll call vote. Mike Stone.
Aye.
Mike Stone. Eric Tolley.
Aye.
Tracy Post.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. 4-0. There you go. So that dispenses with the final recommendations on the 2021 annual town meeting. We still have some other articles to deal with later on when we get more information. With Mr. Horgan gone, I'm just going to go to the appointments, starting with, I'm looking for a motion to appoint Bob Rittenauer as a regular member / trustee to the Affordable Housing Trust. This is appointment term of, I think it's 1 year. I'm looking for the term in here. It just says we're going to appoint him as a regular member to the Affordable Housing Trust. It must be identified in the charter or the charge of the committee. The term.
In the charge for the Affordable Housing Trust, in the charge for the Affordable Housing Trust, it's required that the town administrator be the chairman and member of the committee. So I think I don't know that there's a term. It just as long as he's the town administrator.
Yep, got it. Okay. That answers the question. We've got a motion from Tracy.
Motion.
Do I have a second? Okay. Okay, we got a motion and a second, Tracy and Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, roll call vote. Tracy Post.
Aye.
Mike Stone.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, that dispenses that one. Now we're on to the Golf Enterprise Committee. And the recommendation here is to appoint Andrew Laird as a member of the Golf Enterprise Committee. An appointment is for 3-year term, which will run through April 2024. And Frank Fields as a member of the Golf Enterprise Fund Committee. This appointment is for a 1-year term, which will run through April 2022. Do I have a motion to support those recommendations? Second, do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Tracy Post.
Aye.
Mike Stone.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next set of appointments. Let's see, we got here. Ellen Chapman. This is to reappoint Ellen as a regular member to the Golf Enterprise Committee. This is for a 3-year term running through April 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, roll call vote, say aye. Mike Stone.
Aye.
Tracy Post.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And that dispenses with the board and actually item number 1 under the board and committee action. So the next item is upcoming agenda review. I'm going to ask the town administrator just to kind of walk us through our next meeting and plan what's on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving ahead next week, the critical issue is going to be the annual town meeting preparation. So I think we can talk about that, and I'd like to, talk about the ballot question as well. Do some preparation for that, and we'd like to hold this meeting in person with just the members of the board in the hearing room, and then have it filmed for a Zoom that we can have the public participate remotely. So I know Bob's got most of that work completed with, the various technical staff teams to make that happen. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone, and we'll have, that all confirmed, all of that information for the May 11 meeting in person. And we're also going to return with the Old Yarmouth Inn for a change of premises. And we hope to have Shea Hospitality back as well. So we can wrap up those two items and have our COVID update. But we'd like to have, most of the time set aside for our town meeting preparation and hopefully a nice last meeting for Selectman Tully after so many years on the board. And after that, we really have the little break for the election and town meeting. And then we don't hit it again until May 25, which we have the reorganization of the board. And I know the chairman has been looking very closely at bringing up the issue of the board committee assignments. So if any board members particularly desirous, we have a draft that the office has been working on, and Pam's been doing a great job with that. So that'll be together once we reorganize the board. And we have the first fee increase hearing for the ambulance coming up that evening. And a couple of items that we had in a pile called after town meeting. There is a pile called that. Doesn't have to be on May 25, but we should work to incorporate these onto the list in writing. I know our town planner is looking for an update on the visioning project. They made a lot of progress there, and I think it's time to come back before the board and update you, get some direction. We have an item sitting in the file of a discussion on the town seal. I know there's a presentation that's been forwarded to us. At some point, we should get that back on. And I want to also mention that board members should keep in mind too, on a smaller item, but I think very important, that the Taylor Bray Farm Preservation Association is right now celebrating their 20th anniversary this year. So we'd like to have a discussion at the board level at some appropriate recognition for the 20th anniversary of the Taylor Bray Farm.
What was the date of the anniversary, Bob? Do we know? Or maybe we do, we just don't have that information. So we want to key that.
I've got their newsletter, and I know they have a big event in June on 6/20. I'll find out what their exact date is. I know the farm was settled in 1639. That was a little bit more than 20 years ago, but this is the 20th year. I'll get you the exact date.
Do you have a Zoom background photo of the Taylor Bray Farm yet?
I'll get one. I'll be there on top of that steer next week if I can arrange it.
I want to see that.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
I have a picture I can send you. We can crop you, Photoshop you up there.
Did we give him that? Did we give him that life insurance policy?
This thing is scary looking. I love it.
There you go. Okay. That's great. Any comments, add-ons? Is there anything else that someone would like to add on?
I just want to make sure.
I would like to revisit.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Tracy, say that again.
Well, just as part of the preparation for town meeting, that will be our assignments.
Yep, we'll have to go through the articles and figure out who's going to grab which ones. Thank you for-
That'll be in the packet, the list. Yes.
Yep. And we're gonna make sure a meeting's posted for that date.
Yeah. Yep. Already sent a note to Mary Alice for the 22nd at, unfortunately, 8 o'clock.
Okay. Unfortunately, day's half over, Bob.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Starting at 5:30. Yeah, but 3 hours. So, yeah. What do you do the first 3 hours, right? Gotcha.
And, as far as that, maybe we could discuss how many warrants we're going to print. We don't want to. I want to make sure we have enough warrants.
I think we did have Bob and I had the discussion with Mary Alice, and I think we're doing, what was it, Bob, 600?
600.
600 for warrants and 350 town reports. Somewhere in that name.
That's
We,
good.
we hope to have some left over.
You'll have some left over, thanks. While Tracy's on a roll here, she got my thinking on just a chance on the 11th to explain to people, maybe with a few slides as to exactly what the field's gonna look like, where people are gonna be, what, if anything, they have to bring or not bring, what should they do, not do, kind of what just something that might help us as well as anybody watching the meeting know what it is, the setup, the arrangement, the layout, and how it's going to work, and if there's anything that we need to do that's special. That would be great if we can have that.
We already, based on Bob's direction, we already asked Pat and Kyle to be prepared to come to the meeting next week. Kyle has already done a nice layout of the meeting working with Pat. So they're prepared. They'd already confirmed that they'll be there to discuss that based on Bob's direction.
Terrific.
And Mr. Chair, just one more thing. In advance of next week, I think it's very important that we have a ballot education presentation at a minimum. I think that if we could get staff to do a short video that we could disperse as soon as possible. I think time's running out, and not having a town meeting before the ballot, I think is going to be a little bit problematic. I don't think people have any idea what's even on the ballot. We did a really good job of doing some pre-town meeting informational videos in the past. And if we could get that on Channel 18 and shared on the town's website and on Facebook or so, whatever we can do to get somebody to explain the articles as soon as possible is extremely important.
I think some discussion of that already. Can you update us on what you guys are doing or thinking about?
Yes, it's in the works. I want to really call out Kyle Pedicini, who has just done a tremendous job. We have an expanded outreach program for the town meeting and the ballot, including videos and kind of some social media work that Kyle's doing right now. He's got the map, looks great in terms of what people are going to be doing for town meeting. That'll be up on the website, and we're going to be working also with the Cape Cod Times and XTK, and we have kind of a comprehensive and expanded, with everything that's going on with the pandemic. Our feelings really have to go the extra mile, and I know the time is short, but the videos are coming up soon on Channel 18. Definitely look out for those. And I also want to recognize Pat Armstrong for all the work that she's done with the logistics of the town meeting. It's really been great. So there's a whole team working on that, and a lot of our public outreach program. Kyle's been straight out with that. So this material is all coming out, I think, starting this week. So by the time we roll around to the 11th, I think you may have been able to see some of it and react to it, and then we can make adjustments and just continue it right on through, the election and town meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, let me move on to individual items. Eric, do you have any individual items?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Mike Stone, any individual
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
items for tonight?
Oh, just one thing, just one thing.
Yes.
I think I want to comment on Bob Wittenauer's suggestion that we have some recognition of the efforts of the folks up at Bray Farm that take care of that town asset. Believe it or not, I go back to the meeting where the town took Bray Farm and also the drive-in property for the marina that never happened. And that is Bray Farm is an unbelievable town resource. It's a real treasure. It's one of the highlights really of town assets in Yarmouth. And I know many of the people that run that operation up there, and the job they do is unbelievable. If you ever had to pay for the man hours that went into, going out and repairing buildings and getting the food for the animals and taking care of the animals. And they do that 365 days a year. They do it on Christmas. They do it on Thanksgiving. They do it on Easter. They do it in snow, rain, ice. It's incredible, the level of love that these folks have for the farm. And I've always been a real supporter of those people because and not to mention the archaeological digs that they have up there too, where they're uncovering artifacts of Native Americans that date back 10,000 years or more. It's just, I don't know of any other place around the Cape like Bray Farm. So I think anything we can do for them, we should do. And it's certainly an organization that serves our community very, very well. And they should be praised for the work that they do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
No, I'd like to jump on that for a second and just maybe suggest that we work with the administrator to figure out a way to appropriately acknowledge and draw our attention to the work of the Brave Farm. Maybe do it maybe right before or right around the anniversary celebration, and maybe offer them some kind of certificate of appreciation or some kind of recognition. Maybe
We should definitely bring in some of the officials. I think that's a great idea.
So we'll work with Bob on that. Okay. All right. Any other individual items? I'm just going to go along. Tracy, did you have an individual item?
No, thank you.
Okay. I keep thinking I'm going to Dan, but Dan's not here. Okay, I don't have anything else to add as well. So let's see, town administrator items. We've got a consent agenda here. If the town administrator doesn't mind, I'd like to just move to
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Tracy Post.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
Michael Stone.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Consent agenda is approved. Any more updates, Bob?
There's just one quick thing I wanted to mention. Last week, we conducted our first meeting of our task force that I assembled for reopening the town services. And I just want to thank the stakeholders and the members. Everyone's participating in this. We're all extremely anxious to get back to work. I think folks have had it with the pandemic. We're very frustrated, like even tonight's presentation by Mr. Murphy to still be in red after all this time. And now we're like the only town in red. It's holding us up a little bit, but I want to tell you, we're working with Dr. Bosky and Bruce Murphy have been great. They're very supportive of our reopening. And I just want to say that that's what we're doing. We want to reopen as soon as we can. We have to be safe. We're surveying all of our engineering and preparations, and we're going to have some, comprehensive recommendations that we'll share with the board before we take any peremptory action. The time frame looks to be a little bit later in May than I had hoped. I was originally hoping we were going to be in yellow by now, shooting for the middle of May, but it's mid to late May, and folks are at the town service level participating very strongly, and I think everyone's anxious to get back into things. And we've even had the labor sort of called right out, please come and participate in this stakeholders meeting, because it's important to us that they're involved as well. And they were everyone's been practical and productive, so we'll keep you posted on that. But I just wanted to let you know that there's a whole team that's talking about this every day.
That's great. I appreciate that update. Is there anything else you want to add, or are we set?
I'm set.
That's great. Well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. I'll roll call vote. Tracy Post.
Aye.
Mike Stone.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, everybody, for all your help tonight. A lot of work went into tonight's meeting, and it's very much appreciated, both in terms of the preparation and the meetings, as well as all behind the scenes. So thank you very much and have a great night.
Stay healthy.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.